Think about the last time you bought meat. You walked into a shop, picked it up, paid, and left. Maybe 15 minutes. Zero planning, zero risk. Zero confrontation with anything that outweighs you by several thousand pounds. For most of human history, getting that same piece of meat was a completely different situation. No claws, no fangs. A running speed that would not impress most medium-sized animals. And prey that could end you with one move. So how did a species with none of the biological advantages of a predator become the most effective hunter this planet has ever produced? The answer is not one method. It is a collection of strategies so creative and so effective that scientists are still uncovering evidence of them today. Tonight we look at how ancient humans turned their greatest weakness into their greatest advantage. Let us start with the most counterintuitive hunting method ever developed, the one where the weapon does almost nothing. For decades, archaeologists found sharp stone points embedded in mammoth bones across ancient sites. The obvious assumption was that hunters threw spears at the animals. Then researchers decided to actually test that assumption. What they found turned the story completely around. Throwing a spear at a 6-ton mammoth generates nowhere near enough force to reach a vital organ. The physics simply do not work, so either ancient hunters were doing something ineffective for thousands of years, or they were doing something completely different from what everyone assumed. They were planting the spear in the ground and stepping back. A charging mammoth generates enormous force. By angling the spear into solid ground, hunters used the animal's own momentum as the weapon. The animal drove itself onto the spear. The hunter never needed to get close enough to be touched. The most dangerous animal on the ancient steppe became its own executioner. This was not brute force. This was applied physics, thousands of years before anyone had a word for it. Some ancient hunters used no spear at all. They used stones. Researchers studying ancient stone objects found that prehistoric hunters were selecting rocks of a very specific size and weight, not random rocks. Specific ones. Heavy enough to cause serious injury at 25 meters, carefully carried and kept. For larger animals, hunters drove prey into narrow valleys. Other hunters waited on the ledges above with prepared stones. The animal could not escape what was falling from above. The high ground was not just safety, it was the entire plan. Now let us talk about a hunting structure so large you can only see it properly from the air. From above, they look like enormous kites drawn across desert floors. 2 long stone walls stretching hundreds of meters, narrowing into a funnel. From the ground, you would barely notice you were inside one. The walls were deliberately kept low, just high enough to make an animal uncomfortable. Not high enough to look like an obvious barrier, because the builders understood something remarkable about animal behavior. You do not need to contain an animal to control it. You just need to make every other direction slightly more uncomfortable than the one you want. These structures are called desert kites. Multiple peer-reviewed studies confirmed their purpose. They were large-scale animal traps. The kites funneled gazelles and other animals along tapered paths ending in pits or sudden cliff edges. Their placement shows sophisticated knowledge of animal migration patterns. These were not built randomly. The most remarkable thing about desert kites is where they appear. Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Armenia, Kazakhstan, the Andes, separate cultures on opposite sides of the planet with no contact arriving at exactly the same design. Not because they copied each other, because the problem had one optimal answer and they were all smart enough to find it. Now the methods become genuinely surprising, because the next strategy did not use walls, spears, or stones at all. It used chemistry. Research revealed that 60,000-year-old stone points from a site in South Africa still contain traces of plant-based poison. 60,000 years old. This pushes the use of poison arrows tens of thousands of years earlier than anyone previously knew. The poison came from a specific plant whose compounds attack the cardiovascular system. Hunters extracted it, prepared it without accidentally poisoning themselves, and applied it to arrowheads too small to kill on impact alone. That was entirely the point. The arrowhead was not meant to kill. It was meant to deliver the poison. The hunter shot the animal, watched it flee apparently unharmed, and then followed it patiently for hours, knowing that at some point the poison would do its work. That is chemistry, strategy, and tracking all operating in one mind simultaneously. This required something that sounds obvious but was genuinely sophisticated. Understanding delayed causation. Shooting an animal and connecting that event to its collapse hours later requires abstract reasoning. Cause and effect across time. 60,000 years before writing. Before any formal science, ancient hunters were doing applied toxicology. The same poison from the same plant was still being used by traditional hunters in southern Africa in the 1700s. Identical preparation, identical strategy, transmitted across 50,000 years through nothing but spoken knowledge passed between generations. 2,000 generations. Never written down, never lost. Now the hunting strategy that most completely defies expectation, because it is also the simplest. Ancient hunters just never stopped running. The human body is a biological disaster as a predator. No claws, poor teeth, skin a house cat can break, no night vision. Our top sprint speed would not win a race against most animals we were trying to hunt. Speed was never our advantage. But we have up to 5 million sweat glands, more than any other species on Earth. While a wolf overheats after a sustained chase, a cheetah must rest after 30 seconds of sprinting. The human body just keeps cooling itself. Our Achilles tendons function as biological springs. Our largest muscle is specifically designed for sustained running, not walking. We breathe completely independently of our stride. Four-legged animals physically cannot do this. This method is called persistence hunting. It has been directly observed among traditional hunters in the Kalahari Desert. Hunters pursue a large antelope through midday heat, covering 15 to 25 miles at a sustained pace. The antelope is faster in a sprint, but it cannot cool itself efficiently through its thick fur. After 2 to 5 hours of continuous pursuit, its body temperature reaches a fatal level. It collapses from overheating. The hunter walks up to an animal that can no longer stand and delivers a single blow. No chase, no fight, just patience and biology. From the animal's perspective, something chased it that simply never stopped. No matter how far it ran, that figure was still coming. Calmly, steadily, not even appearing to breathe hard. No animal in nature had any response prepared for this. Nothing in millions of years of animal evolution prepared prey for a predator that could not be outrun. The human body was never built for the sprint. It was built for the marathon, and that changed everything. Consider what persistence hunting required: reading animal tracks for hours across changing terrain, predicting where the animal would go, knowing when it was overheating from visual signs. This was not running. This was running plus tracking plus biology plus strategy all at once. Now let us add the dimension that multiplied every one of these methods enormously: cooperation. At Schöningen in Germany, 8 carefully engineered spears were found alongside the remains of 50 horses. 50 horses! That number is not luck. It is the result of a planned multi-person operation. Someone knew where the horses would gather. Someone assigned positions. Someone communicated a plan before the hunt began. This required language. It required planning that extended beyond the immediate moment. It required coordinated trust. Ancient hunters were not lone opportunists. They were organized teams, executing pre-planned strategies. Different hunters assigned different roles. Some driving the animals, some positioned to cut off escape routes, some ready for the final moment. The coordination required is comparable to a modern military operation. Role clarity, timing, trust in every team member, and all of it communicated and maintained through spoken language alone. No written orders, no radio, just voice and trust. Each strategy we have looked at became dramatically more powerful when organized across a group. The planted spear worked better with multiple spears at multiple angles. Desert kites required many builders and many drivers. Poison arrow hunts benefited from multiple trackers following the same animal from different angles. Persistence hunting could be organized with relay runners, so no single person had to maintain the chase alone. The human advantage was never just physical. It was the combination of physical endurance and social intelligence. And then, between 15,000 and 30 to 5,000 years ago, humans made a decision no species had ever made before. They looked at another predator and decided not to eliminate it, but to recruit it. Archaeological sites show a dramatic increase in small game remains showing evidence of canine digestion at ancient human camps. Dogs were not just eating scraps around the fire, they were actively hunting and bringing food back. Ancient cave art from Saudi Arabia shows dogs on leashes with collars assisting coordinated hunts. 8,000 to 9,000 years ago, the dog partnership spread across the globe faster than almost any previous human innovation because it made both species more effective than either could ever be alone. Dogs could smell prey at distances humans never could. They could track at speeds that would exhaust a human runner. They could flush animals from cover that humans would never have found. They could hold an animal at bay until the hunter arrived. Humans provided the strategic intelligence, the planning, the tool use, the ability to organize a complex hunt. The dog provided the nose, the speed, and the ability to work at night when human vision failed completely. 2 species, each filling the gaps the other left, together covering ground and taking prey that neither could handle alone. This was not taming. It was a genuine partnership that benefited both sides. Dogs got reliable food and protection. Humans got a biological sensor and a speed advantage, and the relationship deepened over generations. Dogs bred for hunting traits. Humans developed care practices that kept dogs healthy and loyal. The human-dog hunting partnership is one of the most successful interspecies alliances in the history of life on Earth, and it began with someone looking at a wolf and making a choice nobody had ever made before. Now let us step back and look at all these strategies together, because what they share is more interesting than what makes them different. The planted spear used physics instead of strength. The stones used gravity instead of direct confrontation. The desert kite used architecture instead of direct pursuit. Persistence hunting used biology instead of speed. Coordinated group hunting used social intelligence instead of individual power. Every single strategy converts a physical disadvantage into an advantage through observation, planning, and knowledge. Ancient hunters did not compete with prey on the prey's terms. They changed the terms of the competition entirely. The mammoth was stronger, so they used its strength against it. The desert animal was faster, so they built a trap it could not see. The poisoned prey could outrun the hunter in the short term, so they waited for chemistry to eliminate the need to run at all. This pattern has a name in modern strategic theory: asymmetric advantage, competing not where the opponent is strong, but where they are weak. Ancient humans were practicing asymmetric strategy 60,000 years before anyone wrote it down as a concept. There is also something important in how these strategies were developed and transmitted. None of them were invented in a single moment by a single person. They were built over generations of accumulated observation. Someone noticed the mammoth charged at the spear. Someone noted where to angle it. Someone refined a tip design. Someone taught it to the next generation. The poison arrow required someone to discover the plant, someone to test preparation methods, someone to develop the application technique. Each step represents a person who paid careful attention, noticed something new, and shared that observation with others. This is cumulative culture. Knowledge building on knowledge across generations without a single written record. Modern science calls this cultural ratchet. Each generation inherits all previous knowledge and can only add to it, never subtract. The hunter using a poison arrow 60,000 years ago was using everything every previous generation had learned, and they added to it. And the hunter teaching their child was ensuring that accumulated knowledge would not disappear when they did. This is why ancient hunting knowledge could survive 50,000 years through oral transmission alone. The stakes were high enough that forgetting was not an option. You remembered how to hunt, or you did not eat. Let us look at what the archaeological record actually tells us, because the physical evidence is remarkable. The Clovis stone points found embedded in mammoth bone show precise engineering, not random sharp rocks. They were designed with a specific mounting system that caused the point to expand the wound on penetration. Someone understood the physics of penetrating tissue well enough to design a tool that maximized internal damage. The stone balls found at ancient sites were not random. They were selected to a specific size range consistent across multiple sites. Consistency across sites means shared knowledge. Shared knowledge means communication. Communication means culture. The desert kites required enormous collective labor, hundreds of meters of stone walls built with knowledge of animal migration patterns. The labor required to build them tells us something important. This was a group project coordinated across a community. Communities do not undertake major construction projects without social organization. Leadership, division of labor, shared planning. The poison arrows pushed specialized chemistry back 60,000 years. This required detailed botanical knowledge. Which plant? Which part of the plant? How to extract the compound, how to prepare it without self-poisoning, how to apply it, how to store it. Each one of those steps represents a piece of knowledge that had to be discovered, tested, and transmitted. The Schoningen spears found with 50 horse remains represent perhaps the most direct evidence of organized ancient group hunting anywhere. 8 engineered throwing spears, 50 animals, 1 coordinated event. The spears themselves show sophisticated engineering, weighted at the front third for aerodynamic stability, like a modern javelin. 400,000 years old. Spears engineered with aerodynamic principles 400,000 years before aerodynamics was a field. And then there are the dog remains at ancient sites. The earliest convincing dog domestication sites show something striking. Dogs buried alongside humans, careful burial, evidence of care when dogs were injured or sick. This was not just a working relationship, it was a genuine bond that ancient humans treated with the same care as their human relationships. The archaeological record does not show primitive, desperate hunting. It shows sophisticated, organized intelligence applied to survival. Let us step back and consider what all of this tells us about ancient human intelligence. Every hunting strategy we have examined required the hunter to understand the prey animal better than the animal understood itself. The persistence hunter knew the antelope would overheat before the antelope understood it was overheating. The poison hunter knew the animal would die hours after the shot before the animal had any awareness of what had happened. The desert kite builder knew the animal would choose the path of least resistance and engineered that path to lead to the trap. This is what biologists call theory of mind applied to non-human animals, modeling the mental state of another species. Understanding what the animal knows, what it fears, what it will do when given specific choices. This requires observation across generations. Knowledge of individual animal behavior and species-wide tendencies. Ancient hunters were applied behavioral ecologists. Without the title, without the laboratory, with only observation and memory. They understood animal physiology well enough to predict thermal collapse during a chase. They understood plant chemistry well enough to extract and apply specific toxins without self-harm. They understood structural engineering well enough to build funnel traps that worked with animal psychology rather than against it. They understood aerodynamics well enough to engineer front-weighted spears optimized for accuracy. All of this knowledge, developed without writing, without universities, without formal science, through observation, experiment, and transmission. The tools were simple. The knowledge behind them was not. A stone point in the hands of someone who understood mammoth charging behavior and soil physics was a sophisticated weapon. In the hands of someone without that knowledge, it was just a rock. This is the real story of ancient human hunting, not the physical tools. The knowledge system behind the tools. Every tool was the physical expression of an enormous body of accumulated knowledge, the tip of an iceberg of understanding. And that knowledge was the real inheritance that passed from generation to generation, not the stone, the understanding of what to do with it. So what does all of this actually tell us? The first lesson, human intelligence was always the real weapon, not the tools that intelligence produced. The tools changed across history. The intelligence behind them did not. It was always the same quality of mind. The second lesson, physical disadvantages are not permanent limitations. They are design challenges. Ancient humans were slower, weaker, and less well-armed than most of what they hunted. They converted every one of those disadvantages into an advantage, not by becoming faster or stronger, by changing the game to one they could win. The third lesson, cooperation multiplies individual capability in ways that have no ceiling. One persistence hunter can run down one antelope. An organized group with relay runners can exhaust prey that would outlast any individual. One hunter cannot build a desert kite. A coordinated community can build traps that catch hundreds of animals across decades. The fourth lesson, interspecies partnership can create capabilities that neither partner could develop alone. The human-dog partnership created a hunting system that combined human strategic intelligence with canine sensory and speed advantages. Neither species designed the partnership. It emerged from mutual benefit discovered through proximity and trial. The fifth lesson, knowledge is more durable than any physical object, but only if it is actively transmitted. The poison preparation method that survived 50,000 years did not survive because it was written down. It survived because every generation found it important enough to teach the next one. The transmission was the preservation. Knowledge that stops being transmitted disappears as completely as if it never existed. Ancient hunters understood this without having a concept for it. They taught because not teaching meant extinction. And the final lesson, the gap between ancient humans and modern humans is smaller than most people think. The brain that engineered a planted spear to use mammoth momentum is the same brain that engineered modern physics. The knowledge domain changed. The quality of reasoning did not. It was always the same instrument, pointed at different problems. Here's what all of this actually means. Go back to that grocery store, the packaged meat you pick up in 15 minutes with zero risk. That represents the endpoint of a 300,000-year chain of hunting innovation. The planted spear that used physics instead of strength. The stones dropped from height that used gravity. The desert kite that used architecture and animal psychology. The poison arrow that used chemistry and patience. The persistence hunt that used the human body's one extraordinary biological advantage. The coordinated group hunt that used language and trust. The dog partnership that created a hunting system more capable than anything either species had ever built alone. Each of these strategies was developed by people working with nothing but observation, memory, and the knowledge of everyone who came before them. No universities, no laboratories, no written records, just minds sharp enough to look at an impossible problem and find the solution. Ancient humans were not primitive versions of us struggling towards something better. They were fully capable minds working with different materials. The same quality of intelligence that builds modern physics was the intelligence that engineered a spear to use mammoth momentum. The same quality of mind that develops modern pharmacology was the mind that extracted and applied plant toxins 60,000 years ago. They just had different problems. Different materials, different knowledge domains. The strategies were creative because the minds behind them were creative. The same minds you carry right now. You are the direct descendant of someone who looked at a 6-ton mammoth with no weapons and no obvious advantage and figured it out. Who looked at a poison plant and saw a hunting tool. Who looked at desert terrain and saw a trap. Who looked at a wolf and saw a partner. Every one of those people is your ancestor. That line of reasoning runs directly from them to you. The problems you face are different. The tool you use to face them is the same one they had. Ancient humans had no laboratories, no universities, no written records, and no guarantee that any of it would work. Subscribe to Ancivex, a new ancient history video every 2 days.